Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Welcome. We're very happy to have Professor Eyal Winter from the Hebrew University, who will tell us about multi-agent initiatives with type-dependent externalities. Please.
Thank you, Yuval. Thanks for your invitation. I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to talk, this is part of my more extended research agenda, which I usually identify as the engineering of economics. I mean, there are two types of ways of doing economics. There's a more conventional one, which is a descriptive approach, where you design models to explain stylized fact. Okay, and there's been very popular. Game theory has been a very important tool within this domain of questions. People, you encounter something, some phenomena in the economy, and you try to explain it, and you design a game, hoping that the equilibria of the game will sort of match what you see in real life. This is the descriptive approach to economics. And there is the normative or the engineering approach, in which you go the other way around. You identify an outcome which has good properties in the economy, for instance, efficiency, okay? And you ask yourself, what kind of games, what kind of strategic environment will give rise to this good outcome? And in doing so, you are actually acting as an engineer. It's not only, I think even reverse engineering would be the right word. So you're asking, you're not building the game in order to explain something. You're asking what should be the game that will give rise to these desirable outcomes, giving this property. This has a long tradition. This part of economics has also quite a bit of tradition, starting with social choice theory. I just spoke with Noga about fundamental papers like Arrow impossibility theorem. And recently, and was my interest of speaking to people like those working in Microsoft Research, has been very popularized in computer science, in algorithmic game theory, and I want one of the purposes of presenting these things is to deliver to people here some ideas that come from economics, hoping that they slowly will penetrate into the literature of algorithmic game theory. Okay, so I'm going to talk about multi-agent initiatives with type-dependent externalities. So what is it? I'm going to think about situations in which people do things together. I'm going to give you some example. And I'm going to emphasize the idea that the utility, the gains they acquire from these activities are going to depend on who are the other people who participate in this initiative. Okay? And then I'm going to introduce a mechanism designer who will ask the question, how do I incentivize optimally these individuals, taking into account that who are the other people plays a major role in their utility function. Okay? So, for instance, I'm going to think about the activity that relies on agent participation. There are going to be externalities that arise among the agents. Okay? So it's going, I'm going to either enjoy or suffer the fact that somebody else participates in the same activity. And then the principal offers a set of optimal incentive for participation. He wants to get people participate, and he wants to do it with minimal expenses. Okay? And the question how to do this. So I'm going to stick to the terminology of throwing a party. Although the application are much broader, as you'll see in a minute, but this is a terminology which seems to be very useful. There's a group of participants whom you would like to come to the party that you throw. And I'm going to denote by Wij is how much person I enjoys the fact of person J attending the party. Okay? Where Wij could be negative. You could, suffer a major disutility by seeing your ex-girlfriend in the party, for instance. Sorry? It's non-symmetric, okay?
She enjoys seeing you.
Yeah? Sorry?
She enjoys
She may enjoy seeing me, okay? And the question is, how should you lure this group of individuals effectively taking into account these externalities? Okay, I'm going to give you some examples, some applications of this model to convince you that it's not only about parties. It's going to be very important to questions in industrial organization. Think about firms that make acquisition offer for several owners of other firms. A decision of an owner whether to sell or not depends on whom are the rivals that are expected to be purchased, right? And how should the acquiring firm, the question is how should the acquiring firm go about making offer to these firms, taking into account that these externalities exist. Another application which I think the most relevant for instance, when I talked with Yuval a little bit, for instance, for Microsoft is network technologies. Okay, think of network technologies like a software. So there are buyers who are agents, and their willingness to pay for the technology is affected not only by the number of buyers, of course, by the number of buyers who are expected to adopt it, but also by the identity of the buyers. Okay, think of a cellular phone. You want to make sure that perhaps it has some technology, network technology. You want to make sure that your partners, your friends, your family relatives are using the same technology. You are using a certain software. When you think about the software, it doesn't really matter what most people are using, but it's much more important about what your co-author are using in terms of a software. Okay? So these are externalities. And if you want to market a product in an effective way, you have to ask yourself what should be, what are these, what is this, how to take into account this structure of externalities. And perhaps I can levy different prices, perhaps I can discriminate users or buyers based on who they are in this network of externalities. Okay? And this is what I'm going to discuss. This is what I'm going to discuss. A mall is another example. Mall owner tries, in a minute, and I'm going to address your question, tries to list stores, big department stores or brand name attract consumers more than other stores, thus induce positive externalities on these stores. And the question is, how should the mall owner price leases? Okay, and perhaps I'm going to bring you a startling evidence that my colleague Eric Gould at the Hebrew University collected some data about this, and he actually showed that these externalities play an enormous role in the way leases are priced in mall. What he found out is that brand names, these and what people call anchor stores, like JCPenney, like Macy's, and so forth, they occupy more than 90% of the total leases spaces in malls in the United States. More than 90% are brand stores. At the same time, when they pay, the total lease that they pay is about 15%. Okay? So they are getting excellent. These big department store, which is not only they're richer, much more richer than the other store. They pay.
Something doesn't sound.
They occupy. The question is how do you define an anchor store? It's not just JCPenney and Macy's. There are lots of other stores. You know, if you go to a mall at Bellevue, you'll notice that there are lots of anchor stores there. It's not just JCPenney and Macy's.
It's
So they have some, so 90% is okay, but I think it's startling. Whatever definition you have for an anchor store, it's still quite startling that this group of stores, this group of brands is occupying 90% of the total space and are paying only 15% of the total lease.
I'm going to claim that I don't believe this data, and we're going to...
Okay, we're going to continue with your skepticism. Yes.
I don't believe that there is a factor of 10 between what one store pays per...
No, maybe one store, but I don't believe this, that 90%, that it extends that far to the top 90% of the space, that they pay 50%. I think the top store may gain a huge, but I think I don't believe
50 or 15?
I'm sorry for that.
Sorry?
Do you think 50 or 15?
15.
So sorry, can you clarify the model? Because what you said and what was written...
You see the model in a minute.
WIJ, is this realized only if I participates as well or not?
Here's the model. First of all, some main assumption, and you see the formal model in a minute. There are heterogeneous agents. Externalities arise between agents, and when externality induced on agent 1 due to the participation on agent 2 is the utility or benefit or loss of agent 1 due to mutual participation. The principal maximizes profit. And let me skip this.
It's only if both
So here is I'm going to go directly to the model. Okay, and I'm going to. This is a model. I have some extensions in my that we're not dealing with. Partly dealing in the paper, and one of the purposes of this is some of them simply are left open because of our limited mathematical skill, and one of my hopes is that people here will be able to address these questions better than me. Okay, so here is the model. There is a group of agents and a matrix of externalities, Wij. Okay, and Wij, as I said, that could be either negative, positive, could be mixed. I'm going to start, and most of my discussion will adhere to the case in which these externalities are positive. Okay? So Wij is how much agent I enjoys the presence of agent J. And I'm going to stick, as I said, to the party terminology, and there is a vector of outside options. So if you don't go to the party, you get Ci. And it's really without loss of generality to assume that these Cs are identical for all the players. Nothing is really gained too much. Okay? Now, a solution is an incentive mechanism which is simply a vector of rewards. This is what the principal offers these agents. So if you come to the party, these are the goodies that you are going to get. And this is the ultimate payoff the players are gaining. So if they come to the party with the set C of agents who attend to the party, the utility for player I from being in the party is the sum of externalities they experience from the group of people that attend, plus the goodies that he's being offered by the principal. And if this exceeds his outside option, he's going to come to the party. Otherwise, he will stay at home. Okay, that clarifies your question? Okay. I said without loss of generality, they're going to be identical. It's really, you gain really nothing by assuming differential outside options. Sorry?
You can put it inside the VI.
You can put it inside the VI. Okay. So agent decision are simultaneous. Okay. So given the incentive mechanism, this vector of V's, I'm going to say that a certain vector of V is incentive-inducing mechanism if full participation is a unique Nash equilibrium of the normal form game. Once you set up these V1 to Vn, you have a normal form game, which has equilibria. And I'm going to think about the principle as somebody who wants to get all these agents together. So he wants to bring all these agents to the party. And he wants to do it in a unique equilibrium. So there may be multiple equilibria, some in which all of them attend the party, some of them all of them stay at home, or some of them stay at home. And he wants to make sure that he's a worst case scenario guy. He wants to make sure that there is no equilibria in which some of them stay at home. And indeed, there's some evidence, experimental evidence, show that in these types of games, people will have preferences to play these bad equilibria. So he really needs to make sure that he screens out these bad equilibria in which some people are staying home. Okay?
This is different from saying the principal wants to maximize profit.
This is not much different than saying the principal wants to maximize profit. So this is, indeed, the more general case was that the principal, for each subset of agents, the principal gains some utility, call it V of S. S is a subset of N. It gains a utility V of S from getting players of S together. And then he wants to maximize net profit, which is V of S minus the expenses that he pays. Okay? But in order to solve this problem, you first need to solve the full participation, because once you solve full participation, then to solve this profit maximization, you'll simply have to take each set and see what does it take to fully make all these agents in S to participate, and then you select the S which maximizes your net payoff. So this is only a part of the overall maximization problem, but this is the most difficult. Okay. Now let me warn you about something, because I gave it at several audiences of computer scientists, and what I'm not going to talk about, what is really not interesting for me as an economist, is to talk about complexity issue. Okay. So there are going to be lots of questions, I assume, by people here saying, this is NP complete, this is exponential time. This is, who cares? Okay, obviously people care, but not me. But indeed I realize the importance of this, and perhaps they're going to be, I'm going to come with a mechanism, with an algorithm that indeed is going to be NP complete, but maybe there are interesting aspects in special cases. Maybe people can identify special cases in which there simplified structure for the mechanism in which computation is possible. Okay, but this is not going to be the main. Computation is not going to be the issue. The issue is going to be to identify this mechanism, to characterize the mechanism, basically mathematically and conceptually characterize the optimal mechanism in these problems. Okay, so the optimal mechanism or the solution is the incentive. So an I&I mechanism is a mechanism that is V that makes the game GV have only one equilibrium in which all participate. And then I'm going to say that V is optimal mechanism if it's both I and I mechanism, if it's incentive inducing, has a unique equilibrium in which all of them participate, and it minimizes the sum of rewards in terms of the expenses of the principal. I'm going to start with positive externalities, and the first thing to note which in fact comes up in a different, in a not directly related paper of mine, but somewhat related. I had papers about incentive in the American Economic Review that has a similar feature. Which is, the first thing to note is the optimal mechanism must be of a sort that I'm calling divide and conquer. Okay? So here is how the optimal mechanism looks like. But then I'll have to characterize it further. It's not the ultimate characterization, it's just a step. Okay? So what the principal has to do, he has to select some agent, I don't know who, but there will be some agent that will be selected Remember, the externalities are all positive. So basically, he wants to maximize the extraction rather than minimize the payment. It doesn't pay, if it's all depend on the outside option. If the outside option is 0, then he just extract money from them. Okay? So he has to identify some player for which he extract no money. He just pay him his outside option. Okay? One agent, there must be one agent who is getting, is paid his outside option without any extraction. Why that? Because if he paid all the people less than their outside option, there would be an equilibrium in which all of them stay at home. Right? It's clearly an equilibrium because no player alone can make himself better off by deviating, knowing that all the rest are staying at home. So one player has to be giving a sufficiently high incentive so as to make him to come to the party, even if he believes that he is the only guy who's going to come to the party. That's kind of a boring party. You have to compensate sufficiently in order to get this, at least someone to attend the party alone. But once you pay this guy, let's call him player 1, once you pay this guy that much, you can extract something from player 2. How much can you extract from player 2? Exactly how much player 2 enjoys the presence of player 1. And once you paid this to player 2, you can extract something from player 3. How much can you extract from player 3? The amount he enjoys the fact that both player 1 and player 2 are there, and so forth. Okay? So this is, once you set up this mechanism, if you write down the normal form game, you'll see that the normal form game has a unique equilibrium, okay, in which is not only a unique equilibrium, is a equilibrium which is attained by the thing which is called iterative elimination of dominated strategies, right? This unique equilibrium gets everybody to attend the party. Okay? One consequences of this thing is that if for instance the matrix, think of the matrix being completely symmetric. All agents like others in the same way, it's all symmetric. Wij equal Wji, and all the Wij's are the same. Okay? Except that on the diagonal you have 0. Then you would assume intuitively up front, you would assume that the optimal mechanism would have to pay them the same because they are all identical. Turns out what I showed you here is that in spite of the fact that they are all identical and you want all of them to attend the party, there exists no optimal mechanism that pay all of them the same. Not even 2 of them the same, right? You have to discriminate among all the M players. And indeed, you have to substantially discriminate. So this is some interesting feature that this type of mechanism have. And it arises, sorry?
Why can't you pay the last term to the first guy also? Because he knows that everybody...
You pay all of them this much? So you extract from them too much. There's going to be...
Because if they know the other people are coming, it's
only equilibrium.
Exactly. You want to guarantee that there exists a unique equilibrium. Indeed, if you pay all of them that much, you will have a Nash equilibrium all of them attend. But there will be also a Nash equilibrium which none of them attend. Okay? Okay, so now, sorry. Now the entire exercise boils down to the question, in order to identify the optimal mechanism, the entire exercise boils down to the question, what should be the optimal order here? Right? So the question involves selecting an order. And I skipped a graph here, but what turns out to be, and this is what turns out to be the case, that this question, which is a classical mechanism design question, the answer to this question relates to a completely different literature coming from operation research. In fact, operation research of, I think, 10 years ago, where people ask a question, an axiomatic question, about how to select an order based on a tournament. I mean, this literature was motivated by the American obsessive to rank sport teams. Okay, so you get an outcome of a tournament. A tournament is, let's say, there are n teams. Each two of them match, and there's, let's assume for simplicity that one of them wins, another one loses. So you can construct out of the tournament a directed graph, a complete directed graph. And now people want to see at the sport paper some ranking of the team. How do you work out a ranking out of a directed graph?
So all your data is whether there was a win or lose. There isn't a score associated with.
Suppose that you also have a score. Okay.
That's more information. That's more information.
That's more information. In fact, the way they are doing it is they ignoring the score, and this is what happened. They are ignoring the score. I'll show you what they do, but it turns out that the optimal solution for this thing maps itself in some interesting way to this literature about ranking and also it maps itself to a different type of literature, which is selecting, which is basically identical, but it has it's a different application, which I'm going to mention later also, which is Condorcet idea about how to rank candidate based on election outcome. Okay. Okay. So let me explain how we select the order. So I'll start in this case. So first proposition is V is optimal mechanism, then it must be a DAC mechanism. Okay, so positive externality. Okay, so what is a tournament? A tournament is a simple and complete directed graph. So you have n nodes, and you have arcs, and it may be cyclic or acyclic, but there is a connection between any two. It's complete, any two nodes in this tournament, in this tournament. Okay, and so so here is how you select the order. So first of all, you have to define a graph out of these matrix. Okay. So the way I'm going to define the graph is I'm going to look at all matches between agents and think about these matrix as a result of a tournament. More specifically, I'm going to announce that player I's win against player J if I likes J less than what J likes I. Okay, so if Wij is smaller than Wji, then I'm going to say that I wins J in the tournament. Okay, if they are the same, then there's going to be a tie. Okay, so if I wins J, if this is I and this is J, I'm going to run an arc from I to J. Okay, this is the way I'm going to construct the tournament. Okay, and it's complete and everything. Okay. Now I'm going to distinguish two cases. Case one, in which the tournament is acyclic. Okay? If the tournament has no cycles, then it's a pretty trivial thing to prove that there must be an order which is consistent with the graph. And not only there exists an order which is consistent in the graph, there is a unique order which is consistent with the graph, right?
So the cycle of length 2 is also a cycle, like one equality?
Equality is also a cycle, yes. Okay? So if there is no cycles, in particular the graph is asymmetric, right? Then there exists a unique order which is consistent with the graph. So for instance, here you would go this way. This is, I think this is not cyclic. So for instance, you, it's not a tournament, okay? But so I won't complete it. But there exists a unique, order I1, I2, In, starting with I and ending with J, okay, where I1 beats I2, I2 beats I3, and so forth. And the first lemma is that in this case, this is the optimal order. Okay, this is the order that the principal has to use for the divide and conquer mechanism, right? In order to minimize his expenses in the optimal mechanism. Remember, so this is the guy who is getting this C. Okay? The intuition here is that there's some popularity contest here, but the way you define popularity here in terms of the standard way we think about popularity is not only a combination of how much people admire you or want you to attend the party, but also take into account what is your interest in being with the others, okay? And basically, if, the better you perform in this tournament, the higher you are going to be in this ranking. The higher you are going to be in the ranking means that anything else equal, you're going to be paid better, okay? So this is what happens in case of acyclicity. Okay? But now the question is, what happens with this if this graph is cyclic? If this graph is cyclic, there exists no consistent order, or there may be more than one consistent order with the tournament. The question what to do then? Okay? So now I'm going to switch a little bit and do an intermission and tell you about what the people in operation research suggest to do, and then connect it to the mechanism design problem. Okay? So what they do is the following. Well, I don't need to write anything. I can simply say it. Okay? So again, they look at the tournament that arise from the games and check again if this tournament is cyclic or not cyclic. If the game is acyclic, if the tournament is acyclic, they do exactly what we do. Okay? They take the order which is consistent with the tournament and say that's the order that represents the best the tournament outcome. If the graph is cyclic, then what they try to do is they try to flip, to cheat. It was, let's say, Manchester United won against Chelsea, so they try to see whether if they flip the outcome, they're going to make the graph from cyclic to acyclic. If they manage to do it by flipping only one arc, then they take the consistent order with respect to the acyclic graph. If they can't do it with one arc, they try to flip two arcs. So they're looking at the minimal number of arcs they can flip, making the graph from cyclic to acyclic, and then taking the order which is consistent with respect to the acyclic graph. Of course, as I'll see with example, this doesn't provide you with a unique ranking. The ranking could be multiple. And then they arbitrarily take one.
And that's you said you didn't care, but that's indeed NP hard.
That's NP hard, yes. That's NP hard.
It's called a feedback set.
The feedback arc set.
Feedback arc set.
Feedback arc set.
And it's not, even the minimum one is not unique, not necessarily.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah.
So if you just have three at the cycle.
So let me now show you what's the parallel to this in our case. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to ask your guess. You already hinted it, and also Noga, about how to improve what I suggested now, knowing that each game can result with scores, right? How do?
The fact that you ignored The WIs is not. You have to take the...
Right, so in the context of games, you could put on each arc, you can put the amount by which Team A won against Team B, and then what would you try to minimize? The total, so you're looking at the, minimizing the total violation, This is what, in fact, they call it also in operation research, minimal violation ranking. But they're not looking at the weights, they're looking only at the number of arcs. They are only concerned with the number of arcs. Okay? So here's now what we have to do in our case. So this is acyclic. I can skip, I can continue. I see that you're following me. I can continue without the slide and then go back to the slide. Okay, so what we have to define the weight. We need the weight for the arc, for each arc. And the weight is going to be simply the difference between Wij and Wji. Okay, so here is the result. The result says the following. In order to get the optimal mechanism, what you have to use is the divide and conquer mechanism, and you have to select the order in the following way. If the resulting tournament is acyclic, you simply take the order which is consistent with the tournament. If the graph is cyclic, then you have to take the order which is consistent with the acyclic order, with some acyclic order that was obtained by minimizing the violations, the sum of violation, where the violations are defined by Wij minus Wji. Okay, so for me it's somewhat surprising that a solution to a mechanism design problem is so much related to this. By the way, the treatment in the operation recent literature is fully axiomatic. So the idea there is to come up with a set of axioms and say, I'm looking to a ranking that represent the tournament outcome, and I want it to satisfy axiom A, B, and C, and then you should come up with a result that says there is a unique way of summarizing the tournament outcome with the rankings that satisfy these axioms, and the unique way is what I suggested. Okay? So how am I doing with time? When did I start? How long do I still have? Yuval? Okay. Okay, so let me see if I want to give you...
And you have to get 90% of the content.
Okay, there are, as you say, getting the...
So this was so far just when all the WIs are positive.
This was all, well, okay, this was when all the WIs are positive. Now let's think about the case where so let's now think about the, okay, I'm going to, let me first finish the positive case, and then I hope I still have time to talk about the other way. Okay? Now, as you mentioned, finding out the optimal order is a difficult computational problem, hard computational problem. But it turns out that there is an easy way to summarize the cost of the principal for the cost of the optimal mechanism, which is an important aspect when you get to the selection part. Remember, eventually you have to select the target group that you want to attend the party, and giving your preferences about these people. And so it's important to be able to say how much it cost me to get these people together as opposed to getting this group together. Okay? And it turns out that it also, this payoff function also gives some intuitive explanation about how the preferences of the principal would be affected by the structure of externalities. So there are two terms here that are relevant. One of them, which I'm going to call K aggregate, which is simply half of the sum of the total externalities. And the second one I'm going to call K asymmetry, which is half of the total sum of differences between Wi and Wj. Okay? So the larger asymmetry you have between, or the larger irreciprocity that you have between players, right? Like player 1 likes a lot player 2, but player 2 doesn't really like much player 1. This thing here will become larger, right? And the result says the following. Take any participation problem and look at that will be the sum of incentives of the optimal mechanism. This is the total that the principal has to pay if the corresponding tournament is acyclic, but we have later where I'm going to show you a similar result for this cyclic case, then the total payment is just n times c, this is the outside option, minus k aggregate minus k asymmetry, which in particular means that the principal is better off, in terms of the cost, better off incentivizing a group where there is a lot of asymmetry among the players. Right? He benefits from a large, controlling the amount of course, the larger the total externality is, the better it is for him as well. But if we look at two matrices which have the same total externalities, then he would obviously prefer he would be in a better situation with the externalities that represent more asymmetry, because he can sort of take advantage of this asymmetry in the optimal mechanism. Okay. So I'm going to skip this. Here is an example. No, that's not interesting. I won't spend, I have limited time. Usually it's a 90 minutes talk, so I have to make selection. Yes?
Is that just the sum over all pairs of the maximum?
Sorry?
K plus K the quantity is subtracted, right? It's just
yes.
the sum over all pairs of the maximum of Wij and Wji.
Why maximum?
The difference
You take the average
you
plus
mean
the
the
difference.
sum of the
Yes,
two
yes.
is, yeah.
K plus K sim is just you sum over all pairs.
If I sum over the old pairs?
One had they both had a half, and one was INJ different, and one was...
Right. So one, so it's
Yeah,
so it's the average. So it's
doesn't slightly not.
yeah, half plus half the difference is half the maximum.
right.
Yes. But
It's just saying that you can simplify or write
The
it in a
average
different
plus
way.
half the difference.
Yeah,
okay.
but it basically follows from your formula, right here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, because you have these do you ever have these quantities separated, or are they always together, added together, K added K? Because I'm just trying to understand what is the more...
No, in trying to figure out what the total cost, they're coming together.
Right,
So it may be...
more natural
Yeah.
to look at just the sum of for each pair, to look at the maximum.
The maximum.
And to...
Yeah, but in terms of the interpretation, you know, in order to see how asymmetry affects the payoff of the principal, it's more revealing to have them separate. But I get your point. Okay, so here is I'm going to skip. I'm going to show you the corresponding result for the cyclic case. The cyclic case, it also NC minus K aggregate minus K asymmetry, but then you have to add this extra cost which arises from these violations. So you have to pay, you pay extra those links which you had to flip in order to get the tournament from a cyclic tournament to a cyclic tournament. Okay, but in terms of, okay, so here is an example. Oh, sorry, what was here? Here is an example to just show you how it works, okay, and about the uniqueness. So this is the matrix. This is the matrix. This is how it translated into the graph, okay. And as you see, there are two ways to do this. There's one way, this is a cyclic graph. You see, you can go from 3 to 1 to 2 to 4 to 3 and so forth, okay? There's one way to optimally incentivize these people is to flip 2 and 4. The cost in 2 and 4, flipping 2 and 4 is a total cost of 2. Okay, and if you flip 2 and 4, you end up with an acyclic graph, and the corresponding order is going to be player 4 is the first, player 3 is the second, 1 is third, and 2 is fourth. And the corresponding payoff is 20, 13, 13, 12. But you have another way, you have an alternative way to do it, which is to flip both 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. If you flip 1 and 2, it's going to cost you 1. If you flip only 1 and 2, it's still going to be cyclic. You can't make it by flipping only 1 and 2. You have to flip also 3 and 4, which also cost you 1. And if you flip 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, the corresponding order is different now. It's player 3 is the first, 2 is the second, 4 is the third, and 1 is the fourth. And the payoffs are different, 20, 16, 10, and 12. But if you sum these up, this is 20 plus 26, 46, 58. And this is also, the total is also 58. Okay? So they sum up to the same cost. Okay? So now negative externality. With negative externality, the picture completely, totally fails. And the mechanism, the optimal mechanism is much simpler. Basically, the optimal mechanism, what you have to pay each agent is C plus the sum of absolute value of all the negative externalities, right? Because here you can't avoid paying them that much, because you have to reimburse these agents for the disutility that you cause them in getting all these people together. If you pay them epsilon less, it's not a matter of getting multiplicity of equilibria here. If you pay them epsilon less, then there won't be an equilibrium in which all of them attend.
Now, all externalities are negative?
All externalities are negative.
All of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah? So graphs play no role here. There's no role for graphs. What happens with mixed externalities? Okay, so there's a slight error here, so I prefer to have you stick with this. So with mixed externality, things become very complicated. But we have one condition under which things are more tractable. Okay, and this condition requires that the relation let's define a binary relation between I and J. We say I hates J. Okay, it's a reasonable definition. I hates J if Wij is smaller than 0, the negative externality. Okay, so if the binary relation hate is transitive, if I hates J and J hates K means that I hates K. But you can think about environment in which that makes sense. Not every environment, but you can think about environment in which that makes sense. Sorry? An enemy of my enemy is my enemy. This is sufficient condition.
What is an example? What is an example of this?
Either this or the other one, which is perhaps more reasonable. The friends of my friend is my friend. Okay.
Yeah, this
makes.
Is there an example of this transitivity?
Sorry?
Can you give us an example where
it makes sense to assume it?
Well, if you hate, everybody hates everybody.
No, if hating somebody.
We have mixed.
No, if hating somebody involves a certain characteristic of a person, right? So, for instance.
What about food chains? Like there's one animal and the animal is eaten up by another one.
so that is the enemy, and the third one needs both of them.
Anyhow, if this is a sufficient condition, that may be improved to there may be a much weaker condition under which it holds, but we couldn't track really the sufficient and necessary condition. But under this condition, what happens is that you can decompose every mixed problem into two problems. One which is fully positive and the other which is fully negative. And the optimal mechanism for the mixed problem is simply the sum of the optimal mechanism for these two negative and positive problems. This may apply for a much larger set of matrices, not only with these, okay? So this is one thing. And the other thing which I'm really curious about, and seemed to me we try to lead, we have some results, but not sufficiently general, is the model where you look at more general externalities. Note that the structure of externalities that I put on the board here was basically bilateral. Okay, so you either like player I likes player J, the amount he likes player J is completely independent of who else is coming to the party. Okay, so for instance, for me, you can imagine, if I'm invited to a party and I like to be with smart people, but not with too smart people. That becomes embarrassed to, So if Yuval and Noga are coming, both of them, to the party, then it's not really attractive for me. But any one of them separately is going to be very attractive for me to have. This makes a lot of sense in many applications, that the externality that player I and player J have between themselves is going to depend on who are other who attend. So a model for that would be a model in which, instead of writing things in terms of matrices, the way we have to write this is the function Vj is the function from 2 to the power n minus j into R. Okay? This is, okay, Vj, okay, so Vjs is how much player J enjoys the presence of the subset S of agents. Okay? So then we have V1 to Vn. These are functions. Okay? A special case of these functions are these matrices. But the question is, can one tell me what the optimal mechanism should look like, or find interesting properties of the optimal mechanism as a function of these n-tuple functions? Can the optimal mechanism in some way represented also in terms of graphs? Is there some perhaps more general concept than graph that perhaps a hypergraph that one can adopt or somehow generalize the result from the matrix to these more general. Yuval, I think I'm done. I'm not going to there's perhaps 1 minute. I mean, there are, let's see. So there are lots of, for instance, in terms of example, you can look at examples like this segregation. Think of two groups, right? Let's call them, there are two groups, rivaling groups. So you think of each person in group A likes to associate only with members in his group, get a positive utility out of it, and get a negative utility or zero from associating with the other group. This gives rise to externalities. Okay, and then you can ask a question, what should be the optimal mechanism to get all these n agents together? This is one example that we look at. Another example is what we call a status example. A status example, or desegregation. Desegregation is the opposite. Desegregation is a good model for for single clubs. Okay, so men likes to associate themselves. The more women there are in the club, the better. For women, the more men there are in the club, the better. Okay, so think about you get this utility up to a point. So you get this utility where the more people from your own group are, and you get the positive utility from where the more people from the other group are. So this is a desegregation example, and perhaps status example is the third one. Sorry? A ratio. Yeah.
That defines the computation, no?
Right. So a status example is when you have group A and group B, where group A is more attractive than group B, and then people gain, whether you are from group A or from group B, you gain more when you associate with people from group A. This is a status example. Then you can ask question: how do you get optimally these people? Okay, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you another story. For an example, that I heard from my nephew. My nephew finished a course of Navy, which is considered a very prestige course in Israel, in the military. And you get girls very easily if you finish this course. It's very recommended for people who want. And when they finished the course, they decided they want to throw a party, to celebrate the end of the course. This is a true story. And they started getting informed themselves in different nightclubs in Tel Aviv. And gradually they noticed the offers are becoming more and more attractive. Once they mentioned that this is about celebrating the end of a Navy course, offers became more and more attractive. At some stage, the club owner said, you know what, if you allow me to open the club for other visitors, I throw the party for free. Okay, you pay nothing. All the drinks and food are on me, as long as you open it for other people. They were impressed, but not enough to strike a deal. Sorry? Kurs Chovlim. Yeah. And they continued searching. The end result was that at some club, they were willing to throw the party for free and give each cadet on this course a DVD player as a present. You imagine there were lots of girls during this night they cashed a lot from other people who. So this is.
They really took this offer and they got the DVD.
They got the DVD. They got the DVD. Thank you.